Jean Ray, curious soul born in Arizona and raised in Memphis, Tennessee, studied at Fisk University, earning a degree in biology, began researching the phytochemistry of medicinal plants in Asia and the Pacific region in 2010 at the University of Hawaii Hilo and Korea University in Seoul, South Korea. Completed a master's thesis program at Mahidol University in Bangkok, Thailand, in pharmaceutical chemistry and phytochemistry.
So today we have a good friend of mine, Jean Ray. Jean is a very special individual. I say that because there's a lot of admiration. I like to hang with people that know more than me in certain topics. And every time I hang with this dude, he's got some nuggets, some knowledge, some resources, and it's definitely been a great resource for me and my business throughout this journey. So happy to have Jean. Jean, thanks for joining.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. So talk about your journey, prior to cannabis and kind of where you're at now.
It's always a loaded question. All right. So my journey, I would say with cannabis, I know even though this in your questionnaire, but like my first time smoking, hopefully my parents don't see this, they'll probably kill me. It was like around 14, 15. It was like stupid, just tried it. And I was like, I'm like, all right. And then I didn't touch it until I was in college. And I remember it was this article that came out that mentions how I just indulged in cannabis while I was at Fisk University. I'm like, well, that's not necessarily true. I smoked while I was at Fisk, right. But it's like I wasn't just getting zoned out completely. It's like it was like the use was a little bit heavier prior,
right?
But it wasn't that much. So like my degree at Fisk was biology, and I come from a family that has like nurses, physicians, or whatnot. A lot of people in the healthcare. So I knew I want to kind of go down that realm. And it wasn't until maybe like my senior year when I realized that I enjoyed chemistry way more than biology. And then when I started doing more graduate studies, I just pretty much just combined the two and I just started to get a little bit more interested in biochemistry. Long story short, wanted to become a pharmacist, realized that wasn't a realm for me because I couldn't see myself just staying behind the building or behind a desk at a local Walgreens or CVS and dealing with irate patients every day. So I'm like, let me just be in the lab. So I gravitated more towards that. So when I made it at the University of Hawaii at Hilo, I was volunteering and joined a program at their College of Pharmacy, School of Research. And my advisors, they were from all over the place. Had advisors from Australia, from New Zealand. One of my major advisors, he was from India, and his partner was from South Korea. And so like they were encouraging me, if I'm going to be studying more of these medicinal plants, specifically in Asia and in the South Pacific, then I need to be there. So I just started I enrolled in a program at Korea University in Seoul, South Korea. And I would study like advanced subjects in biology and chemistry. Then I enrolled in a thesis program at Mahidol University in Bangkok. I stayed there for about close to 3 years. And my thesis was on pharmaceutical chemistry and phytochemistry, where I was just simply isolating compounds from medicinal plants and doing more structural elucidation, which just simply means understanding how the molecule looks. And so during that time, that's when I kind of grouped up all of those medicinal compounds. And it's like, you can get medicinal compounds from all of these other medicinal plants. And I was specifically looking at compounds in this tree called like argar wood, and then other medicinal fruits like mangosteens or whatnot is a very common fruit in Southeast Asia. And then, so of course, cannabis. And I'm like, you can definitely pull all of these medicinal compounds that we popularly like know as cannabinoids. And so I'm like, this is one thing I definitely wanted to do. After I was finished with my program in Thailand, I moved to China and I was teaching students about biology and chemistry. And then so all the while I'm doing that, I'm just slowly refreshing my knowledge on everything I knew about cannabis way back when I was stupid enough to like try it in high school and in college, and I didn't know anything about it. Just getting like random bags that had God knows what in it. There was no QA, there was no QC back then. You just simply got a bag and you went off and smoked it. Like, have fun, enjoy. Here's a gamble. So, so yeah, but like now it was more about like I have all of these friends and families, colleagues that are smoking, and like they're having like younger people with them that are indulging in cannabis. So like they would need to have that quality assurance and understand that there's a quality control behind what they're consuming. Because when they smoke alcohol, when they drink alcohol, when they consume like over the counter medicines, there's no second thought as to like what's in it, because like it's already ingrained in our brains that like that goes to a whole rigorous process that we have no idea about, but we trust that label. We can get bread, we can go get aspirin, we can get cheese or whatever, we can see how much protein's in it, all of that. We don't second guess that, but we second guess cannabis and the labeling. So because there's no QA, if we're still second guessing it now, you can only imagine 10 years ago when you were getting it from your dealer, you just got a plastic bag, you just got an eighth of White Widow, like I guess it's White Widow, whatever. You didn't think about it, you just smoked it. Yeah. But like there was no strict QA. So like that's what I started to get a little bit more interested in and understand what is in it, what is the entire makeup of this plant. And so I made it to Massachusetts in 2016. My buddy that works at MCR, shout out to Ryan Cassidy, he told me like, hey, they may need your expertise here in Massachusetts, may go rec soon. I'm like, all right, I guess let's see what happens. And I made it here September 1st of 2016. 2 weeks later, some people at MCR knew some people at Garden Remedies, because Garden Remedies was starting up at the time, and they interviewed me, and then I started towards the end of September. Come November, Massachusetts passed the recreational laws, and like I guess I made the right choice, and I've been at Garden Remedies ever since. Started as a associate formulation tech, like just formulating all of the vape pens that people know and love at Garden Remedies. And like the staff got a little bit larger that was under me. And then like now I'm the vice president of laboratory operations, almost 4 years later. So it's been a crazy journey just to see what's happening just only in Massachusetts with the cannabis industry, not yet alone like the world, yet alone just the United States. So like it's been evolving and growing, no pun intended. Pretty much ever since I stepped down, like especially from my perspective.
Right. That's amazing. And congratulations. I didn't think you were a VP, man.
yeah, thank you. It's like I said, it's been a hell of a journey.
Yeah, man. So just kind of going back to what you had said, not only is it crazy in Massachusetts, but around the U.S. and globally. Right now, there are 33 states that have legal access to cannabis, and there's not a lot of research that's going on. So, who's doing it right? What state is doing it right in terms of research and science of cannabis?
Yeah, even though you have to do your notes as well, but like the University of Mississippi, is a famous scientist. I don't want to mess up his name. It starts with an E or whatnot, but I'm not gonna say his name because I don't want to like butcher it. But there's a government funded research laboratory specifically for cannabis in the University of Mississippi, and stuff like that. Like that's needed just so like they're able to understand what's all in the plant and like to do more like very heavy like pharmaceutical like trials that see like how does it actually affect the body. But in terms of like which state has a correct is a very tough question, because since it's not federally legal, each state needs to kind of create their own program. Each state literally has their own regulatory body. So here in Massachusetts, we have the Cannabis Control Commission. And I want to say it's either in Washington or Oregon where they have like the alcohol board or something like that. Like their alcohol regulatory body is over their cannabis program. So each state has their own regulatory body, and therefore each state is going to have like their own individual recommendation and regulations or whatnot. So there's no like universal standard in terms of regulations, and in Massachusetts in terms of just what we have to adhere to, like especially on the testing laboratory side, it is very, very strict. Like which is like a double-edged sword, but we have very like strict parameters to ensure that the cannabis that is being tested meets all of the requirements or whatnot. So like there's a lot of very strict parameters that we have to pass. But like I said, it's double-edged sword. It's double-edged sword there.
Right.
But I definitely wouldn't say like there's one state that has it right.
Right. And I get that, I told you I interviewed a bunch of people from different markets. It seems that the notion is to take the little things that are going well in one market and just implement. I think that's very telling for social equity, which we'll, get into in a little bit. But I kind of want to go back to the NIDA, the National Institute of Drug Abuse, which contracts at University of Mississippi. What do you know about that what they do there, and exactly like, because I've heard some crazy things that the weed that they get there is garbage.
I know they this was actually way back when I actually inquired to study there or to work there. This was back in 2015. I remember I was in Qingdao, China, where I was living for 2 years, and I remember emailing them or whatnot because I was trying to figure out, I'm like, if I'm going to move back to the States, I have to move back with a plan to be in cannabis. I can't work anywhere else or be in any other industry. I need to be in cannabis. And so I emailed them, and like they actually emailed me back and told me that like they weren't looking for anyone right now. But during the time where I was just trying to figure out what they do, that's how I figured out that like they were a government-funded research laboratory, and pretty much like, so a basic testing lab would just simply just test like what's in the plant to make sure to understand like the cannabinoid levels and pesticides and microbials and all of that. Mm-hmm. And what they're doing is more on trying to figure out like the quality of it, mm-hmm. and how and its effectiveness towards like antioxidants, so to speak, or cancer, or any other ailments that like we're consistently having, and almost just trying to like debunk some myths or whatnot if this actually works. Like back in the day, like you'll see these older people smoking and saying like, oh, it's for my glaucoma or whatnot. And so it was like, does it actually do that? And so like it's these type of research laboratories that would give you that answer. Right. And so they have to do very, very strict trials to say yay or nay, because people will always assume and say like, oh, this does this for me. But like there's so many variables just to say that cannabis does this. Like what we do know is THC gets you high. That's what we do know. It has that psychoactivity. So we know that for a fact. Everything else may be slightly speculative or whatnot. But that's one thing that we do know, and like I like to operate in the realms of knowns. Right. If you're going to come from like an expert level, you need to state what you know. You give THC to anyone, they'll be kind of high. But everything else, that's all kind of anecdotal, and like in the realm of science, we can't necessarily kind of have a foundation built on anecdotals. We have to actually do trials and believe in the numbers and data, and it takes years. Right. Just for example, so in terms of if you're doing pharmaceutical research, before a drug gets on a shelf, it needs to go through 10 to 20 years of clinical trials and all these different phases before it's like, all right, okay, it's stamped and approved. You can go ahead and sell it or whatnot. It takes a long time for that to happen. And however, but with cannabis, that's based on public opinion. And like, oh, I like smoking weed. All right, cool. Let's make it. Let's regulate it.
Right.
Do that. I'm like, they wouldn't do that with Tylenol.
Right.
People say, "Oh, I like the little compound here. It makes my headaches go away." Okay, cool. Let's put it on the shelf. Like,
Right.
no, it went through years and years of research and clinical trials before it was put on the shelf. And before cannabis can be in that same realm, it needs to do the same thing. So these research laboratories are pretty much doing that groundwork. So of course you're going to need more as the laws continuously to lax a little bit. You're going to need more just so there can be consistent collaboration between laboratories all over the world.
Right.
Because one laboratory is not going to be able to handle all of that research. Like you're definitely going to need like other fresh, inquisitive minds in order to look at other parts and aspect of the plant and all of its other constituents in addition to its cannabinoids.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's a great point. I think, having a good idea of what they do, because just even their name, NIDA, being it seems like it's an issue of drug abuse, and that's the only thing they want to debunk, right? It's like, it's addicted or not.
Use it. No one is necessarily abusing it. I would say that from my perspective, from what I've seen, it can be habit forming.
Right.
I'm like that's with anything. You don't necessarily have to be an alcoholic, but like some odd reason you have that habit of grabbing a beer every time you come home from work. But you wouldn't consider yourself an alcoholic. Same thing with smoking. It's like if you just want to just simply chill, you come home and light up a joint.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that you are addicted to it.
Right.
Like that's like to be addicted to something, to abuse it, like that's a very strong claim.
Right.
And you have to look at people that are on the harder drugs and that are literally like withering away if they don't have it.
Right.
Cannabis is not really like that or whatnot. Like I said, it's just habit forming.
Right.
Like, but you're not having people like withering away because like they haven't had a joint in a week.
Well, that's a good. I mean, would you consider it a drug as a scientist? Is cannabis a drug?
Yeah, I consider anything that's mind altering a drug.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I would definitely 100% consider it a drug.
Word. That makes sense. So just on that topic of mind altering, I know you mentioned the THC. Without a doubt, we know that it gets people high. The CBD though, and you've done some interesting studies, and this is where I talk about the admiration, because like it's really cool some of the stuff that you've done and you've told me about. So I'm hoping you can talk about your studies of CBD and then also how that relates to THC.
So CBD, cannabidiol, that is almost like the cousin of THC. And it doesn't, and it, I don't want to say that it's non-psychoactive because it alters, it's like some little bit like in your overall makeup, so to speak. It changed a little bit, so I wouldn't say that it's non-psychoactive, but like it doesn't have that euphoria effect. Like you're not floating when you're on CBD. It doesn't get you high. Right. And with CBD, it's such a question mark in terms of its medicinal benefits because it will affect people completely differently. So like CBD, you may take CBD and it may put you to sleep. I may take CBD and I just kind of have this relaxation or whatnot, or I may not have a headache after I take CBD. And then, and also it'll be another factor that like you may need, before you can feel anything with CBD, you may need 100 milligrams. I may only need 50. So, and like the scary thing about CBD is that people can always make these crazy claims to say that, oh, like this is a 50 milligram CBD gummy, or this is a 20% CBD or hemp joint or whatnot, lab tested. At the end of the day, anyone can make a label. At the end of the day, anyone can make a label. I'm pretty sure people have like amazing like typing skills and whatnot. That doesn't necessarily mean that that is actually what is in like this product. So, and luckily we have like testing laboratories like MCR that you can just simply send it to them and you know exactly what's in it. But since there aren't any like immediate effects with CBD in comparison to THC, like I just mentioned, if you take THC, you're going to be stoned or feel some type of euphoric feeling. With CBD, nothing. So it's like, so I could literally give you a cookie right now and say like, hey, it has 50 milligrams of CBD. You just have to take my word for it. You're like, oh, this is an amazing cookie. I think I feel great. whatnot, but you wouldn't really know. You wouldn't really know. So it's like it's like yet again it's that whole QA and QC of CBD, and yeah, it's weird, man. It's like I tell the story so many different times, but like I remember a colleague gave me a hemp joint and it said 15.31% CBD. I think he got it at the gas station for like $20. $20 for 1 gram hemp joint. I tested it on the HPLC, which stands for high performance or high pressure, however you want to pronounce it or call it, liquid chromatography. And all that's doing is like it is you get like a sample of a particular mixture and you make it into a solution and you put it through a column and it just separates all of those different compounds and measure it quantitatively. And I did that to this hemp joint and it came back at 0.004% CBD, and they were selling it for $20.
That's crazy.
Oh, that's so rude. It's like why would you do that or whatnot? So it's like anything to get a quick buck in America, I guess. But it's just one of those things that is like it kind of tarnished CBD because CBD comes from cannabis. Cannabis is an amazing plant. All these cannabinoids, they're special. They're special compounds, and like people and like CBD actually works for people. Like when it's consumed at a right dosage, and it especially more of a full spectrum CBD, like with all the other cannabinoids and phytochemicals that's from the plant, it helps people. And like the studies I've done just to give it to people for free, just like try this. I'm just curious of the effects. And most of the effects or most of the feedback was that it helped relieve anxiety. Like people that are kind of like overwhelmed in the morning with all the things they have to do, people have reported that like the CBD, like full spectrum CBD helped them kind of relax and able just to take on the day. Some people say they helped them sleep. Some people say they did absolutely nothing for them or whatnot. And also some people say like it helped them with pain. And so yeah, so it's kind of all over the place, but it's like it just depends on the individual and the fact that CBD has like a wide variety of medicinal benefits. It's kind of hard to pinpoint like what does CBD do.
Right.
It's a wide array of benefits, but we all know what THC does.
Yeah. Right. So you had mentioned like anyone has a opportunity to make a label and print anything that they want.
Yeah.
But I feel like the federal government is trying to crack down on CBD regulations. So like the question would be like, you know, what can they learn from CBD regulations and then possibly institute into THC regulations? Since it's not federally, well, CBD or hemp, I would say, it is federally legal. So now like let's start utilizing these universities that have like multi-million-dollar laboratories or whatnot, create internship programs and like just simply study what hemp can do or whatnot. And then like that would give these regulatory bodies and these agencies to know how can they properly regulate and make and make these rules and recommendations for hemp or CBD products or whatnot. And then so as technology increases, people should be able to identify that they have CBD in their product to understand like the accuracy of that particular label. Right.
It's like I said, that's a really unique question because I'm very curious of the future, like what the government is going to do in terms of hemp and CBD. And and there are some places where you almost like can't sell CBD. You have to call it hemp or whatnot, because if you were to put full spectrum, that implies that there are other cannabinoids that that's not necessarily federally legal.
Right.
So so that's kind of like that slippery slope. You gotta use like the right text, so to speak, in order to being able to properly and legally sell like your hemp products.
Right. Very interesting. So we're talking science here, man, and I think one of the most unique things that, you know, again, like being friends with you is that we look alike, and we don't see a lot of us in our industry.
Yeah, most definitely.
And the other part about it too that I had mentioned is that like you are a mind of science. That in itself is unique in its own respect, that I can actually understand what you're saying.
I try to keep it less boring.
Right. No, absolutely, man. So like in terms of equity, in terms of diversity and inclusion, like what can be done in the science world to help introduce that into the cannabis world? Because I'm sure you don't see a lot of yourselves out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, you're right. Especially like in the New England area. But I'm like, or just pretty much anywhere.
You're right.
For that matter. But
damn sure not in China.
Yeah. Oh no, that's definitely one like 0.001%.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh look another one.
Yeah.
But I would say in order to utilize more or to increase that social equity, especially on the science end, would be for companies, organizations to look at these type of organizations, like I think it's like MRCC and other like social equity programs that are fighting for more of this social equity or whatnot. I'm like tap into those communities and see like these people that are very talented and eager to get into the sector, and then also like start utilizing these universities or whatnot that will have more Black and brown people or whatnot, like in these science programs that are like the biology major, the chemistry majors or whatnot. Like look at them and start like these like internship programs in cannabis labs. Like, hey, just come hang out and just see what we do, right, and see if this is a realm. Because at the end of the day, science can be a snoozer. Like, I bet anyone to go into a biology class, like biology 101, and try not to yawn. Like, I'm like, it gets to a point where, like, unless you have a very, very energetic teacher, if not, like, if it's like a monotone person just talking about carbohydrates and lipids and proteins and amino acids and enzymes, it's a snoozer. It's like, first of all, you have no idea what the hell they're talking about. It's like what are you telling me right now? Don't curse at me. Right. And it's like, and it's like you would really need to have a very enthusiastic teacher, like to explain for you to even grasp these concepts. Right. So, but if that teacher is talking about something that you're interested in,
right,
like cannabis, we
right,
all have tried cannabis in one way, shape, or form, and like then now you're not young anymore. You're like, oh, what, cannabis, weed? What are you talking about? What can it do? Oh, really? I didn't know this. Tell me more.
Yeah.
Tell me more. And then like now you're interested. So if you get like a black market person that has been making like their own extractions and everything, like now I'm pretty sure like that person probably wasn't even interested in science way back when. But like now that it's about cannabis, like now they know more about like vacuum pressures. Now they know more about like melting points. Now they understand like the chemical makeup of a compound. Right. Now they're interested because it's something that they actually are interested in or passionate about. So like now you have like these black market people that will probably give two shits about cannabis, and it's like, okay, like now they're interested in chemistry and biochemistry, biology. It's fucking beautiful. Sorry, excuse my language, but it's beautiful though, like to see people become interested in science, and now they want to enroll in these universities and like try it out now. So like companies that are like looking for talented individuals, white, black, brown, Asian, whatever the case may be, is that like start looking in these universities and like these social equity organizations. They have people that are eager to learn more about it because it is a interesting subject, because everyone smokes. It's not necessarily one of those whisper type questions like, hey, you smoke? You smoke? It's nothing like that anymore.
Right.
It's like you can easily talk about it. It's a conversation. So now there's a conversation. It should be able to be a subject that is taught in universities like Clark University.
Absolutely, man. So what about, I mean, and that's a great answer. Shout out to MRCC. I actually interviewed Joey recently. He's
oh yeah,
panel as
we
well.
got a gram.
Yeah, Joey got a gram, dude.
It's super cool.
Yeah, man. So you talk on the private sector a bit, companies working with these social equity programs, looking for good
Yeah.
science-minded people. What about on the government side? Because I'll preface this question with a statement here that like most social equity programs are not going great around the nation.
Yeah.
And even though we're in one now in Massachusetts, I can be honest with you and say that it's not fulfilling what it set out to do. So you think that like science is almost like a back burner, you know what I mean? Like if you think about science, but like what can the government do to introduce more equity in science? It's a loaded question.
I like I mentioned, like pretty much collaborating with these like community
Frontline.
stations or whatnot,
Right.
and to be consistent and to have an actual scope, because anyone can say like, hey, like we're starting a program to help these individuals. But if there's no end goal, like you're just simply just doing something like without any execution, like you're just working blindly. So if there's like consistent and well managed programs to say like, hey, if on day one you will start this program, on day 105 you should have all of this knowledge. You should have like your business plan ready. You should have like your resume all cleaned up, and you should be able to easily work into this company. It will not be because of the network that you have built through this program, or you should be able like to create your own. So like it's really consistency and like well managed that like and well managed programs that the government should be able to latch on to and just simply help. So it's almost like the Small Business Association. Like Small Business Association has this chapter called SCORE.
Mhm.
I want to say, and like there's these mentors that have been successful in business that will talk to like startups or like young entrepreneurs or any entrepreneur that's simply trying to start a business, and they would mentor them to say like, okay, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have that? Okay, we need to do this. Let me help you focus on your business plan, like your financial goals, like your P&L systems, all of this. Like there's companies that or organizations that the government has funded to do that.
Right.
Not. And so it's like if the government were to latch on to these other companies or whatnot, or these other organizations that specialize in more social equity, it would help. It would bring more funding. It would bring more manageable structure, and just help it flourish. Like in the entire United States, it would definitely help it flourish and to create that network. At the end of the day, I would say that it's like a lot of these organizations, like they're doing like a great job. It all falls on the person that's trying to do it. If you're not hungry for it, and
Right.
you're just kind of like just sitting back and like, all right, okay, I joined this program, you do all the work, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
Like the other person needs to, like, if you're eager enough, like you can get into some great pockets and great networking communities and circles, and put yourself in position to either create your own or join an organization that's doing great. So it works both ways.
It's crazy you say that because I had interviewed someone a few weeks ago and she basically alluded to the same thing. Like, don't reinvent the wheel. There's organizations that are maybe not cannabis specific, but you can kind of latch on and help build and help grow and expand essentially. So I think that's a great answer. Um, so this is a kind of a loaded question, partly because I had an email last week or earlier last week from a big cannabis company, and they want to know how they can recruit and retain Black diverse talent because it's not like represented in this market in Massachusetts and
Yeah.
across the nation. So someone who's been with the company for 4 years, obviously well talented, Black young dude, like why are you still with Garden Remedies essentially? And what can other companies do? You know what I mean?
Well, so it's like my situation is very unique, whatnot, and so when I first joined Garden Remedies, it was just simply a startup, and luckily, shout out to the CEO, Dr. Karen Casey, love her, and so like since she's come from that medical world, she understands like research and development, and I'm all about R&D. I always consider myself a researcher first and foremost. And of course, everyone's like, "Oh, he's a scientist, he's a chemist, medicinal chemist." cool, thank you, but I'm a researcher first and foremost because I believe in data, I believe in numbers, and like she understood that, and so she gave me that kind of creative freedom to say like, try it. And it's like, of course, we have the scope of what we need to do to keep the company successful, and then like it's been continuously growing, and we've been hiring like amazing people. Of course, we all go through growing pains as with any company, but we have amazing people and an amazing team, and so on the laboratory side, we've been able just to be creative or whatnot. And like when we do have our downtime, we're able to figure out like, okay, what else can we explore? And there's always these different options, because when I was in school and doing all these research projects and whatnot, I was very limited to of like my playing field as to what I could play with, as to what I can extract. Like I was happy just to get 10 milligrams of one compound. But like now I can get pounds of one compound and figure out like, oh, we can do X, Y, and Z with it. Like what does this look like under these conditions? And I was able to do that with garden remedies, and or still being able to do that. And it, like I said, it is fun. It is fun. So like my situation was a little bit unique. And so like these other companies that particularly want to employ more Black and brown people, simply search for it. And like, of course you can't say, hey, we're only looking for Black and brown people. Of course you can't say that. I'm like, because I'm a strong believer in diversity. So it's like, you need to collaborate with the entire world, not just with one person. However, but since that particular group of Black and brown is definitely in that minority side, like if a company really wants to look, it's like just search and like and network or whatnot, and like and see who's available, and like of course like there's not that many, or from what I've seen, not that many like Black and brown people that are on the science side around here, but yet again, but like they're still there, right, or whatnot, and like I said, these companies that are doing these whole social equity programs, it's pretty awesome that like the talent that is that's joining these networks. Mm-hmm. It's pretty awesome.
That's dope. I like how you said the research. You're a researcher first.
Yeah.
I got to hear more about that. Probably at another time. But just kind of going off that research question.
Yeah.
Traditional market is a paperless, when I say traditional, kind of going back to, when we were in high school and like you didn't get a seat, you know what I mean? So I feel like it's the same when it comes to research and the information that we have with cannabis. So mm-hmm. where do you start your research as a science-minded person? Like, where do you start? Is it, like?
So for me, like I'm curious about everything, any and everything. So it's like, if I were to take something that, if I were to smoke, and I just feel like completely just like on cloud nine. Now I'm like, why do I feel like this? What is literally going on in my body that's causing this to happen? Why am I having this out of body experience? And then like I kind of go into that rabbit hole. So, but in terms of research, it's like anything that makes you kind of like lift your eyebrows, like, oh,
right, like
I like this, and it's like, so you for me, it's like I would want to figure out why I'm feeling like this or whatnot. Why does this drug do this? Or if we want to like look at more ailments, it's like, how can we properly mitigate these ailments? It's like, why why do you need to go like on a particular diet for your body to be at its optimum, or to be complete optimization of your body? So like you would need to have certain nutrients or whatnot. It's so many things that you can continuously research and understand, because there's so much random information online. Yeah. And it's, as you're looking at all this information, it's like, what is real or whatnot? Anyone, just like I said, anyone can make a label, anyone can put up a website or whatnot and make all these claims. And then so there is biased research. If you're looking for an answer or whatnot, even though it's the complete wrong answer, I'm pretty sure you can make a valid argument based on your countless days of research and regurgitating things you read on Reddit or Wikipedia.
Right.
I'm sure you can find an answer to your very biased question or perspective. But like I said in the beginning, like with these pharmaceutical drugs or whatnot, it takes decades before it is actually on the shelf because it has to go through these clinical trials or whatnot. Like you have to go, if you have to go like far beyond like just like your backyard to pick some leaves and like, oh, what is in here? Like you have to like really dive deep in like as to what you're trying to find, especially like on like the plant chemistry side. You have to like really dive in deep as like what type of compound you're trying to find. Like, and even after you find a particular plant, you have to go through all the notions of extracting it and isolating it or whatnot. And isolation is a very, very strong term because when you're looking at a problem, you have to isolate different factors. For example, if we know for a fact that THC makes you stoned, right? What happens when you isolate THC from everything else? But like if we didn't know THC made you stoned, you should be able to take isolated THC and not feel anything. So and so you can isolate that compound. It's like, oh, maybe it's something else in cannabis. And then so you slowly just keep isolating all these compounds till you figure out like, oh, this is the compound that's making me stoned. And then so of course in this case it is THC. So like when you isolate THC, you take that, you're pretty gone or whatnot. So it's like when you isolate different factors or different variables, then it helps you get closer to your to answering your question or your hypothesis or
right.
whatnot. You can assume all you want with any type of medicinal plant or any type of question or whatnot, and you can assume that this is the correct answer.
Right.
You won't know until you actually like isolate different variables.
Right.
So and like that's pretty much all research is to simply to get your nose out the way. Okay, it's not that. Okay, it's not that. Maybe it's this. Okay, it's not that. Okay, oh, it is this. So that's all research is. And even when I was doing a case study on CBD, I don't know what it's going to do. So it's like, give me the answer. So like now I'm looking for feedback. I'm like, it may help you sleep. I'm not sure it does it. Or actually may help with anxiety. I'm not sure it does it. So I'm asking all these questions just so I can get the find answers to my questions really.
Right.
Whatnot, like that takes months, that takes years or whatnot, and like a lot of data gathering or whatnot in order just to pinpoint that question. And like all this data that's been accumulated over years can be answered with one little Excel graph. And like, okay, this is it. All right, okay, I can go to sleep now.
Yeah. It sounds like you're a student still. Like.
Oh yeah, most definitely, most definitely. Like I think everyone needs to be a student.
Right.
And even when you're a student, you also need to be a teacher because when you're able to teach a subject effectively, that means you get it.
Right.
That means you understand it. So just because like if you read something one day like in a biology textbook, and if I were I have a book here that says molecular neuropharmacology. I can read this and regurgitate everything I just read to you. You probably don't understand anything I just said because that probably means that I don't fully understand it. However, if I read that book and teach it to you and you can teach it to someone else, that means I actually understand what I just read.
Right.
So it's pretty much all just effective translation. And like I usually give this example, like even though I'm not fluent in Mandarin, even though I was in China, I'm not fluent in Mandarin in the least bit. I can say a few things in Mandarin. You're like, oh, that's impressive. You have no idea what I just said. No idea. So like that doesn't necessarily mean I taught you anything. Yeah. I just sound impressive. So I can use tons of big words and all this like science jargon. It doesn't help the student. It doesn't help the audience. It doesn't help the listener.
Right.
Like so. If I talk like that, it's only for me to boost my ego, and I'm not about ego. I'm about teaching and helping people understand it. And if you don't understand, that means I need to go back and figure out what I did wrong. So I am still a student. I'm still learning, and I think that's an effective teacher that is still learning. Right. A teacher that's been in a particular subject for years and decades, and that are still like opening up books and like, okay, oh, I didn't know this. I can actually teach it this way.
Right.
Like that's very, very effective.
That's exactly what I was mentioning before about how I get what you're saying. So, right.
Trying to make it fun and understandable, man. I've been translating for a while now.
Oh, that's great. But what's new in the science trends? Like, what's exciting? What's going on out there, man?
What's exciting is just like getting to the very granular level of like the trichomes and
Okay.
or like on actual cannabis leaves or whatnot, like or the flower. So like I'm like that's what I'm interested in. Like I had a presentation at Florida Gulf Coast University. They have a cannabis certificate program. Shout out to Dr. Rosenthal.
Okay.
Amazing lady. Like if any, I think she has a TED talk. Dr. Martha Rosenthal. She has a TED talk, and she became the director of this certificate program in Fort Myers. Anyway, but in the presentation, like the very first photo is a magnifying glass over a leaf, and I was explaining to the students that like even though I love like the different names and whatnot of these cannabis strains, but I don't really care. I'm like at the end of the day, I'm mostly concerned as to what's inside.
Right.
Like, and so like that, and like that's why I love that photo, just like a little magnifying glass over it. Like I'm interested on the inside of it. And so like I want to get to a more granular level as to figure out like when you put a magnifying glass or like a microscope onto a trichome and see like what's all in it. You may see like some like floating cannabinoids and terpenes in there, whatnot. Like, of course, that's not what you're going to see if you put a microscope onto a trichome, but it's interesting to see like how can we get it like to a little bit more granular level to help educate like your average consumer.
Right.
And like that's what's interesting to me. And then like more on the like things on how to manipulate the cannabinoids. Like I know like water soluble cannabinoids becoming a thing, so how you can put it like in a beverage or something like that, and like to put like on a nanoscale so it can like be a little bit more fast acting. Like these little things are pretty interesting, and as to like what's happening in the realm of like the science field. Like there's so many things. Of course, I can't get into the bulk of like product development, but so many companies are trying different new and improved things. So yeah, like there's a lot. There's a lot, and I would say like lastly would be of course terpenes. I'm a huge terpene advocate or whatnot because there's so many, and the different composition of all these different terpenes can be a completely different effect versus another composition of terpenes or whatnot. So it's going to vary from strain to strain, from batch to batch, from plant to plant. But as I tell everyone that with any cannabis plant, the common denominator is THC.
Right.
Terpenes can be a wide variety of like all these different terpenes. So like it's going to affect you slightly differently. So that's what unique about, because like there's a huge variability with terpenes, and it's slowly becoming a popular topic in the cannabis community. And when I talk to people about terpenes, I forget that it is not as popular as I thought it was. I'm like, oh, no terpenes? Really? I'm like, oh, my bad. And I have to back up a little bit. So, and I find myself, I'm like, oh, that is a particular subject matter that isn't as popular as I thought when I talk with people. Like people still have no idea what terpenes are.
Right.
So I have to like remember who I'm talking to. It's like, okay, let me back up. So these are terpenes. So yeah.
Well, that's gay. I think I got that game from you, especially like the strain, the hybrid versus indica, sativa, almost like the strain names. Like, forget that stuff, man. I don't even care about that. You know what I mean? Like, which is very interesting.
Yeah, man. I know like the whole indica sativa talk like that. That's something I've been passionate about. So I'm not going to really dive into it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I believe everything is a hybrid. And so I'm like, some people may agree with me, some people may not, but I believe everything is a hybrid.
In what respect? What do you mean by that?
Say it again.
What do you mean by that? In what respect that everything's a hybrid?
everything's a hybrid because I know people are consistently crossbreeding and like selective breeding or just simply selective breeding, because back in the 70s and 80s, like your average cannabinoid or average THCA percentage probably was like maybe 7.
Mm-hmm.
Like now it's like 17. So I'm like, where did that come from? Of course, it's going to be selective breeding. So you're going to say like, oh, this one has high THCA percentage. Let me crossbreed this with this. Let me crossbreed this grape 8 with this OG Kush and make Northern Lights. And that, I'm like, of course, that may not even be like the morphology to get Northern Lights, but just saying like you can end up creating all these different things, and it's all of this genetic breeding that is simply diluting that parent phenotype. So it's like, if that just say hypothetically that you had a pure sativa plant, all right, and like you crossbred it with some other plant that had a high cannabinoid. So by the time like 4th generations down, like that quote unquote sativa is pretty diluted with all this other stuff or whatnot. So it's like to say so like just to say that you have something that's like purely sativa is a long stretch. However, people do familiarize themselves with indica sativa. So I give them that. So like if I go into the whole spiel like, hey, it's a hybrid, that would still confuse people. Like, hey, what do you mean? Because it's like, if I smoke sativa, this does this to me. If I smoke indica, it does. And so like I have to respect that, because I can't just up and say that
doesn't.
It doesn't. Yeah, I can't say that. So it's like I respect people's references, because I go based on references all the time, especially like in analytical chemistry. That is like, you have to respect references or whatnot. Like there's this one. I'll talk about like chromatography for a bit, but I'll even get simpler than that. Like if you have a scale, if you have a scale, like for it to be calibrated for like 100 pounds, you're going to need a true 100-pound standard to put that on there to make sure it's like, okay, this is calibrated for 100 pounds because you have like 100-pound weight.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have a 100-pound weight that has been standard and certified as a 100-pound weight. You put that on the scale, and if it says 101, 105, that means that the scale is off. So like you need that reference just so you can understand like that, like, oh, that you weigh 105 or that you weigh 120 or 150 or whatnot, because you already have that calibration, or you already have that standard of 100-pound weight. So like people and consumers always need to have a reference. So like if they had something that said like, oh, this OG Kush is a strong indica, and if I was just like some random consumer and I see that it's like I got some OG Kush and it said like a heavy indica and I smoked and it put me to sleep, I am definitely going to go back to that store, go back to that dispensary, and like, I want that OG Kush because that's a strong indica, and I'll always have that reference. Like, I deal with indicas like to sleep. It helps me sleep. I'm just going to deal with indica only.
Right.
No sativas, indica only. OG Kush. That's it. That's all I want. But I may get a surprise if I go out to like Washington and I'm like, hey, you have that OG Kush?
Right.
Yeah, that strong indica, and I smoke and I'm off the wall.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what? But why?
Yeah.
But it says OG Kush. So like I said, there's so many variability. I'm not going to get into it.
Right.
But I can go on and on and on and on and on as to like, it's a hybrid. But
right. No, and that talked to your point before about the standardized testing. I mean, we talked about CBD, some of the experiments you've done there, and I think that is an issue with the industry, because you go from even your example of going from a dispensary in Massachusetts to Oregon, you can go to two dispensaries down the street from each other that had different growing methods, and they name the same OG Kush, and they're not the same.
Yeah. Yeah, because like you said, different growing methods. If a person is growing organically, if they're growing hydroponically,
Right.
If they're growing in different soils, different lights, different terpenes may become effective,
Right.
but not or be transparent in that particular strain. You could have like the same seeds or whatnot, or the same flower, two different growing methods. You're going to have a different plant. You're going to have a different flower at the end of that. Right. So like just because it has that name and it has that that label that it is a strong indica sativa,
Right.
it doesn't necessarily mean that that is what it is.
Right.
And then even to make it even more complicated, each and every one of us have our own endocannabinoid system.
Yep.
And since we have our own endocannabinoid system, it may affect you slightly differently. Just because I see a plant and I'm like, hey, I'm a researcher. I know exactly what it's supposed to do.
Right.
I smoke it and it does exactly what I anticipated. And
Right.
I see that it has all these terpenes that's going to make me feel like X, Y, and Z. I smoke it and it puts me to sleep. I have the best sleep. I sleep like a baby.
Right.
I give it to you and you're off the wall or whatnot. And so like now I have the question mark. Now I look like an asshole to say like, hey, I told you it's supposed to make you sleep,
Right.
but it didn't. So like I'm not like some cannabis guru or whatnot. Like I understand variability or whatnot. So like unless we have like a nationwide data on all the strains and all like the growing methods to say that, hey, if you grow this particular plant in this type of soil with this type of lights,
this type
of time schedule, yeah, with all of that, and like 100 people out of 150 people said like it helped them sleep.
Right.
Then you can have that like that confidence to say like this should help you sleep.
Right.
Then you can have that confidence and I can say that wholeheartedly. But
Right.
But until then, it is still going to be a guessing game, and it will always be recommendation or a suggestion or whatnot. It'll be the same thing if you go out to eat and like you always have to wait. It's like, oh, well, like, what would you recommend? Well, now her taste buds might not be the same. His or her taste buds might not be the same as yours, but they would recommend it's like, well, this is what I love. This is what tastes amazing. And then they also may back it up with like other feedback and people saying like, oh, like a lot of people that have come here say like, oh, like they love this steak or whatnot. So this is my recommendation. Take it or leave it, either or. But not, it's the same thing with cannabis as it stands now. Right. It's always going to be a recommendation, and then like PCAs will always like say like, oh, we have got testimonies about X, Y, and Z. Why don't you try this strain?
Right.
But not. So I'm like, that's what we have to do now versus like making these claims.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I want to shift gears a little bit, probably touching on topics that we've discussed in the past. I think it certainly relates to like, kind of like the testing that we'll talk about and like recommendations. Mm-hmm. When we look at, our community, Black community, our family, our friends, they're so often, it sucks to say, man, but like I go home sometimes and I just see, you take what the doctor gives you, right? And you don't question it. And there is an opportunity for cannabis to intersect with our community, our, older peers, our elders, where they don't necessarily have that mindset. And it sucks because, those are the same communities that have been harmed by prohibition. So really the question is like, where does that science side intersect with, reversing the harms of prohibition? And this is good for you because you are a science, like health person, right? Like you probably could be a medical doctor in another life, right? So like,
yeah, I was like that's my brother. That's my brother. Mario.
Is he really? Your brother's a doctor?
Yeah, so he's the physician of the family.
Yeah.
So I would say with that, it wouldn't necessarily be science. It would just simply be a very good understanding of the plant. It's just simply re-educating these old senior citizens in the Black community or whatnot. Like talking to your grandmother that's 80 years old and like, I'm not touching that. That's the devil's lettuce. And it's like, but hold on. But like, do you know X, Y, and Z? And then it's like, if you start like, okay, what? I open up that cabinet, seeing everything that you're consuming right now.
Right. And
can you tell me everything about that particular pharmaceutical drug that you're ingesting every single day?
Right.
Are there side effects? Are there this and that? Like what about all this high sodium that you have in your diet? Like why is like most of these Black people having diabetes and getting their leg cut off? So it's like because of different dietines and everything like that, like what we readily consume, go to the South, you'll see a lot of overweight people would not be because of bad diets, and it's almost like genetically predisposed that's going to happen.
Right.
So when people are like kind of shooing away cannabis because it's bad or whatnot, I was like, all right, hold on, take a step back, look at what you're consuming.
Yeah.
Right now, look at what you're consuming.
Right.
And not saying cannabis is the cure all, but before you like point judgment or whatnot, look at what you're consuming in your everyday life,
Right.
or whatnot, and compare that to cannabis, and as to why you wouldn't consume cannabis. So like when you kind of have that re-education and almost like kind of being like a little bit more comprehensive as to like what's going around in the community, then like that 80-year-old grandmother was like, huh, okay, let me try that joint or whatnot. It's like, so like maybe or whatnot, but it goes to re-education and also integrity, because especially in the Black community, like you will see like you'll see like the hardcore quote unquote thugs sitting on the porch smoking a blunt or whatnot, not doing anything with their lives, and like they'll get money here and there just to spend their money on weed.
Right.
And so like that's what like these senior citizens like grew up and seen, like especially like in these like harsh communities, and like just smelling weed all over the air. And then it's like that weed, that blunt roll would be synonymous with criminals or whatnot. And yeah, so of course they wouldn't want to associate themselves with that. Of course, it's like this weed is causing them to be like a deadbeat, lazy, not doing anything with their lives.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like it just simply goes back to re-educating like your family and friends about what it is, and like comparing it to everything that they're consuming nowadays.
Right.
Yeah.
So at a very basic level, and I can agree with that. Because
Yeah.
if we think about it, it is a generation above us, our family, our parents and their parents that have been lied to the most. I could say that, like, kind of going back to what you had mentioned as a kid, touching cannabis and realizing that it's not, you know what I mean? Like, it's something that can be evaluated in your life, and like you made it your career because you believe in it, right?
Yeah.
But like, those are the folks that are older than us that like have a tough time really understanding that. So I feel like it is our duty to re-educate. That's
I'm trying each and every day. I think my goal in life to make everyone in the world a little bit more stoned.
Yeah.
Like, just try it. Just
try it.
Try it. Just try it.
Oh, I love that, man. So yeah, I don't know if you talked about you being from Memphis. So we'll get into like the speed questions here, and a little bit more cultural. Yeah. And this is cool because I know you smoke weed, and like, yeah, just super curious on these questions here. But yeah, so a marijuana drug movie, or a drug movie, or a marijuana movie that's been impactful in your life, or your favorite.
I'll say the funniest one would be How High.
Okay.
Yeah. That would be, just to be completely honest, that would be the funniest one, and it's cool because the character in How High is a herbologist or whatnot, and he's looking at all these medicinal plants, and it's really cool. And he's in Harvard or whatnot, and like, and they're talking about all these medicinal plants. So like, I was like, that's definitely the funniest. The one that kind of that made a stamp on my career is called The Scientist, and it talks about this like the grandfather of cannabis science, which is Dr. Ralph Meshalem, and it's called The Scientist. I think you can easily find it on YouTube. And I remember it was in March of 2016. March of 2016. I was watching this, and it further solidified exactly what I wanted to do, because this person was isolating delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, or what we know as THC. And so he isolated the compound, and I think it was like a little story in there where he took some of these isolated compounds and gave it to friends at a party, and everyone's just like giggling or whatnot. And so it's like it showed like the social impact like right. that it has that it have on people, and so it's pretty interesting or whatnot. So like that documentary definitely kind of let me just sit up and really admire admire this person or whatnot, and just admire like and respect the science that it comes from, because the science that people are doing with cannabis, like the science and this knowledge has been around for years and years and years.
Right.
It's just simply being applied to another medicinal plant. It just happened to be cannabis. Yeah.
Was that Israel for that last
Yeah,
documentary?
exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
I think I've seen some clips of it.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
cool, man. So what about and this is probably gonna connect to the Memphis roots, but like music, man. What are you into for music?
Music. I would say one of my favorite artists would be Kid Cudi.
Okay.
Yeah, like it's like I'm more of a Zen type of music person, but
Right.
I'm not a huge fan of like nowadays like very current music. It's it all sounds the same.
Right.
But so and like even though like I think I was listening to Kid Cudi when I was like going to school in Nashville, but in Memphis was really known for like that, you know, like the whole heavy blues, rock and roll, and of course like the crazy hip hop culture of 3 6 Mafia and Play It Fly, Project Pat. So like that stuff that was in my little Walkman when I was in junior high. But beyond that, I got more into the more of the Zen type of music, no matter what genre it was.
Absolutely, absolutely. What about books, man? What's the title that has helped you in your career?
I would honestly say the book I actually just mentioned, which is Molecular Neuropharmacology, and this is a book that I am still reading, and it's because that like I'm just so interested in like our neurons, or like just like our just like the whole network of our nervous system.
Right.
Like I'm so interested in that or whatnot, and it kind of goes in the realm of like psychology as well. And so when I think about these cannabinoids, and I really want to get to the granular level to figure out exactly what is it doing,
Right.
And how can I explain that to my 60-year-old aunt? How can I explain that to like my 18-year-old nephew that's like just now want to smoke cannabis or whatnot? So it's like I should be able to explain it to an 18-year-old that's stubborn, and also like a 60-year-old that's stubborn as well in their own little on their own little right or whatnot. And I should be able like to get this book
right
and explain to them like what is going on in your brain as soon as you puff it. Or whatnot, and just to make that like into a simple animation, just so people can say like, oh, this is what this does, or whatnot, just to make it easy and translatable to any and everyone. So that's the book that is kind of making me uncomfortable. I definitely gravitate more towards discomfort because it helps me become a better person.
Absolutely.
If I'm very comfortable, nothing is evolving. Yeah.
I feel you, man. That's game right there. Yeah, and just kind of going back to what we were talking about before, how like we're in interesting times. I like that perspective of like talking about your 18-year-old nephew and then like your aunt, because again, that's our job. You know what I mean? Like
it is
in this space that we're in right now in these unique times. You know, it's our obligation. You know.
Yeah.
So you touched a little bit on when you had first interacted with weed. Would you say 13, 14?
Yeah, I believe he was 14.
Where were you? Is the important? Who'd you get the bud from, bro?
I'm not gonna get into that.
Yeah, dude, come on.
I'm not gonna get in who I got it from. It was a relative, I would say.
Oh, okay.
It was a relative, and I had it, and then like just me and my friends just like, let's try it, and we're just rolling it up into like some random paper, and just trying it, and then it's like I'm like, am I high? Like, are you high? Are you high? And like, and we're just trying it out. And I want to say when I was actually in junior high. I don't believe I touched it when I was in high school. Maybe once, but definitely the very first time I was in junior high school. I had to be like in 8th or 9th grade, and like when I tried it, and I was like, okay, I'm good. And I honestly, it was because it was it was so known like in like the Black community about like, oh, this person's high on marijuana or whatnot, and like oh, he has a blunt, or and so it's like, and it was just curiosity,
Right.
and so I'm like, I just wanted to try it, but it wasn't until where I really started using it, like once I left Memphis and I was in Nashville, and it was trying it there, like a little bit more and whatnot, and like I would say like that was a little bit more habit forming because it was like something to do,
Right.
because I prefer smoking the blunt with friends versus drinking. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Word, man. So you touched a little bit on your family of nurses and doctors.
Yeah.
How does your family perceive your career? Are you the only that's in cannabis, even though your brother's a doctor?
Yeah, I would say I'm the only one in the cannabis field.
Mhm.
In terms of who consumes cannabis, no telling.
Yeah, but they're supportive though.
Oh
Your
yeah,
family's
oh
supportive.
like 100%, 100%. So my buddy came here back in September of last year, and he interviewed me. It was actually right here in his basement. He interviewed me, and I was speaking on this topic about when I first got up here.
Oh yeah.
When I first got up here in 2016, of course, like my parents was like, "Oh, like what are you doing? What are you doing up there in Massachusetts?" And I'm like, I was kind of hesitant to really say cannabis, so I just simply said, I'm like, "Hey, I'm working with medicinal plants," which was true, which was very true. I just didn't specify which one.
Right.
And luckily, since they already knew that I was doing research in like with mushrooms, and when I was in South Korea, with other medicinal plants in Hawaii, like the ohia tree and like noni, and when I was in Thailand, I was doing research on a medicinal plant, which is called argo wood and mangosteens. So like they were already aware of this array of medicinal plants. So as soon as I said medicinal, their brain didn't go to cannabis.
Right.
Their brain went to in addition to cannabis.
Right.
So they're like, all right, cool. And so and it wasn't until I want to say it was either 2017. Yeah, it was 2017. We went on a family cruise, and I had my vape on me. And so it was like so it was all of my siblings except for one, my parents, nieces and nephews. It was a pretty big family cruise, and that's when the curtain was pulled back, and I'm like, and so like once they realized what I did, like there was zero judgment.
Right.
Zero judgment. And now my parents utilize it religiously. Like my mother loves tinctures. My dad loves vapes or whatnot. And like I come from a very Christian household. Like I'm like Memphis is right there on that Bible Belt.
Right.
My dad is a bishop, and I want to say on the street where the church is, there's probably like 9 other churches.
Right.
Just on that one street. Like so, there's tons and tons of churches in Memphis, and like I'll probably get in trouble for this, but which indicates where there's a lot more like hypocriticals.
Right.
There, like there's a lot of hypocrites on that Bible Belt, but I digress. But like my parents, my family, they're very supportive in what I do, and knowing that I'm not like necessarily abusing it.
Right.
So like they understand that I'm trying to re-educate the public. Like they understand that like I'm willing to talk to other family members and help them understand exactly what is in like this CBD that they got from some random dispensary or
Right.
or what's in their product. So I'm able to help them understand like a little bit more or whatnot than they did before. And then since like they know me as a person, like they see me grow up, like they know I'm not like some random like throwaway person that's just like throwing away his life and like, oh, I just want to smoke. I don't want to do anything else but smoke. Like they know I'm like not like that. Like they know I come from like strict education, and like that, like that's what my family was built on, which is simply educating and higher education. So like that's where people know that's where they know I come from. So like when I'm talking about cannabis, like they get into their realm where it's like, oh, we should listen. This
Right.
this is not just some weed head. This is just not some stoner kid or whatnot that's just talking about stuff that he just read online. Like, I actually have science and research and experience to back all of that up. And like, they know I'm just not like, oh, like let me let you try this. You're gonna be high as shit. Like, I'm not trying to do that. So like that's what they understand. So it's like my parents love what I do, and my siblings, like, they're always asking me about it, and like, and they're very happy with what I do. So it's super dope. But never in a million years I would think that my parents would be cool with cannabis.
Right.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm laughing because I'm thinking the time we were at equity class, social equity class, my mom called. That was one of my favorite things. I was like, Mom, I'm sitting with my boy. He's a weed scientist. Yeah, oh man.
Yeah.
Did you say? And you say your dad's a bishop? I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
My dad is too, bro.
Yeah. Word.
Yeah, he is. But well, he's getting ordained soon or something like that. Like, but he's been a preacher for a minute.
My dad got ordained. I think I was in Asia when he did, but he got ordained as a bishop, and he probably doesn't want this to be public knowledge, but you know, he uses it when he can for medicinal purposes only.
Right.
Like, he's not there. It's like, oh man, that
right.
sermon was long. Let me go ahead and he's not doing that.
But that's part of it though. When we talk about, you know, equity, we talk about opportunity, we talk about the black community, bro. Like, I had to have a talk with my dad too. Like, he found weed as a kid in the crib all the time. So for me to land on this path in the career of cannabis and him to be a preacher, I think that's part of it, bro. You look at a city like Lawrence, or like I think it's Lawrence or Lowell, where the church community is actually the biggest proponent of moratoriums. And they're the ones that are saying that they don't want it in their backyard. It's led by the churches, bro. Even at home in Bridgeport, bro, it's the same thing. There's a lot of churches in Bridgeport, and they're the ones that are leading it, saying that we don't want cannabis here. So I think it's like you said, the re-education, bro. So shout out to your pop, bro. Yeah.
That's simply all it is, man. It's re-educating, because people it's almost like ingrained in their brain as to like what cannabis is and what it would do to you, and how it's a gateway drug and all this other.
Right.
So.
Right. So that last question, bro. Strain, and I don't even know if strain's the right word for you. Like, what's your favorite? What's your type of weed?
My favorite, man. So when I like anything unique, honestly.
Right.
Like, I try to be as random as possible. That's how I make life interesting. My favorite strain, anyone that knows me would know this question, or know this answer to this question, is Ghost Train Haze.
Okay.
Ghost Train Haze like, we used to have it at Garden Remedies, and I loved it. I was so happy when they gave it to us so we can make it into a vape. I love that strain, and it has this very dominant terpene in it called terpinolene, and so like there's very common terpenes. One being beta myrcene, another one being limonene, and matter of fact, the third one being beta caryophyllene. These are three common terpenes. However, terpinolene, not necessarily rare, but like, you don't see it highly expressed in most strains or chemovars, however you want to call it. But with this strain, like, it has such a distinguishable smell. Like, if I were to walk through packaging and like they were trimming it and putting it in like apes or whatever, I knew exactly what they were trimming.
Right.
I knew exactly what they were trimming, and so it was such a unique strain. And so it's one that we don't carry anymore. But like, I love that strain.
Why don't you guys carry it?
I think like with any manufacturing facility, like, you would want to make sure that you maintain quality. And then, so of course, like, the more and more that you're consistently growing something, like, the quality may go down.
Gotcha.
So, like, you may have to just simply like rotate it, or propagate more seeds or whatnot. Not to get too much into like what we do, but like, but since cannabis is such a like an array of different things and whatnot. Like only thing that really changes is the name, really.
Right.
So you want to make sure that things become rotated, and like that's what we do. Like we want to make sure that we are adherent to quality each and every time. Just because one person in the company loves this one strain, we're not going to keep it, even though it's going to be like a very low yielding plant.
Right.
Not like, hey, we're going to have to go ahead and like get it out the building, get something else in. But like that was definitely one of my favorites. That was definitely one of my favorites, and like I love how it made me feel. And so even if I were to say something was a sativa, for me, every time I smoked that, like I could never sleep. Like my brain was all over the place.
Start reading, bro.
all over the place. So it was one, and like it was something about that strain that's like with other vapes. Matter of fact, I would this would be my last point that I touch on. So I had like a one of those like fruit vapes, like a strawberry, watermelon, whatever, and it was very high in THC, very high. I want to say it was almost like in the 90s. And typically vapes are around like 70s, 80s.
Right.
But this vape, I want to say it was strawberry. It was like around 90, maybe 91%. I had to puff on it quite a few times to really get stoned, so to speak. And I had a Ghost Train Haze vape, and that was a high 70s, low 80s, I believe. Twice. I needed to puff on that, and I was already low. So it's something about that that mixture of the terpenes and the other phytochemicals that come with that, or that came with that Ghost Train Haze, along with that 78% THC and all those other minor cannabinoids. All of that bundled together got me like that, versus me having like that other vape that had 91% THC,
right?
Whatever other cannabinoids and like those isolated terpenes, and it took me a while for me like to really feel the effects.
Right.
So it just goes to show that like there's so much more to cannabis than just its cannabinoids and its terpenes. It's so much more than just THC.
Right.
There's a lot more to it. Whatnot. So, but it was just something about that strain that stuck with me, and like that was over 3 years ago when we like I think when we finally stopped carrying it, but I will always remember it. It's deep to me and whatnot. So
we're on a hunt for those genetics, bro.
Yeah, matter of fact, so we isolate the terpenes. Like when we're doing extraction, we isolate the terpenes. And I still have this one lone jar of Ghost Train Haze terpenes, and I just make sure that it's still there.
Yeah.
And so I'm like only reason we haven't utilized it because we can't reproduce it.
Right.
So like because it's long gone. So it's like, but those terpenes are still there.
Right.
So it's like it's just like a little ode to like the old school, like that's what we used to do. So like I will always forever be that close to that strain. Yeah.
Are terpenes like raw flower? You know, you let raw flower sit for a amount of time and it kind of degrades. Would terpene do the same?
Like as long as it's stored properly, it has a pretty long shelf life. If it's not stored properly, then that's when you start to have like some degradation, some oxidations happening. And simply what I mean by oxidation is like just think of like like if you bite into an apple and like
discoloration.
And then like as soon as air touches it, it starts to turn brown.
Right.
And of course, like even though there's some discoloration, you can still eat it.
Right.
But like if you have it out for days, it starts to turn brown, start to get like a little bit furry. It's like, yeah, of course you're not going to eat that. So it's like that's just like the degrading of all like the little compounds and nutrients and whatnot. But it's the same thing with terpenes. Like at the end of the day, cannabis is natural. So you have to respect it as such. So you're going to isolate anything from a plant. You're going to want to make sure that you store it properly. Right. So like with terpenes, like we keep ours stored properly. And so I can go into I can go to our storage right now and still pull things that was isolated years ago.
Right.
Not, yeah, and like you like yeah, that it goes back to the whole like QA and QC of any facility like needs to kind of hold that same standard that it's like if you're going to create something for people to consume, very like have very strict parameters or whatnot, and
Right.
and have that integrity and have that transparency that like your end user could believe in and stand behind. And
Right.
so like I said, I've been happy to see like what we've been doing at Garden Rims. I can't speak for any other cannabis company, but like the people that I've been in contact with and my colleagues, co-workers, my lab team, shout out to my lab team, love them to death. Like that's what we've been believing in from day one or whatnot, not trying to cut any corners or whatnot. This is what we've been doing. So yeah, like I said, it's been really cool just to be a part of this journey.
That's great, man. Well, yeah, I appreciate you joining, bro.
Yeah, man, this is fun. We need to do it again.
Gene Ray is easily one of the most reliable and trustworthy voices that I personally believe in within my personal network. He's helped me out tremendously for my business, more specifically on the things that I'm not good at, which is technically getting technical into science, extraction, which is a huge area of legalization. In fact, it's one of the biggest components that separates the legal market versus the unregulated market. And just his experience with studying different medicinal value plants outside of cannabis, and then being able to bring that experience into cannabis specifically is huge. And then also just the fact that he's a person of color. You don't see that often and at the level that he is in the industry. So just a lot of gems, a lot of game from Gene, and I appreciate him joining. And I hope you guys enjoyed our conversation as well. All right, thanks.